Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another random review. We're coming to the end of my unofficial Mikhail Kalatozov season that's just made up of random reviews and double takes, with 1969's The Red Tent, with Sean Connery as a Norwegian, Peter Finch as an Italian, along with Claudia Cardinale, Mario Adorf, Hardy Kruger, and the lead actor in Tarkovsky's Solaris, Donatas Baniosis, which is not his real name, but the lead actor from Solaris, you know who he is. The music is by Ennio Morricone. This is an odd film. This is a DVD-R of the Paramount DVD, which I think goes for about 70 quid on eBay. It's a DVD-R, so this is why I managed to get it for under 20. I didn't realise at the time, obviously. But you can kind of tell it's just a DVD-R, especially by the menu that comes up when you actually play the disc. Obviously the other Kalatozov films that I've featured, many of them are 5-star films. This film is severely flawed. It's funny, this is the film that he made. It's a Italian-Russian co-production. It's got big stars, and strangely enough it's the least successful film that I've seen out of the whopping 6 that I've now seen by Kalatozov. It's weird. Obviously I talked about Kalatozov as being one of the great compositional directors in the first 5 films that I saw. This doesn't have great composition. This doesn't have amazing shots. This is kind of a run-of-the-mill Sunday afternoon looking adventure film. So there's no expressionistic shot composition and framing in this film. Because strangely enough, once you get to dealing with stars and things like that, you don't really get to do expressionism much. This is all about the stars. Again, it's a strange film. So we open with Peter Finch as an older General Nobile, an Italian general who led this blimp expedition to the North Pole in 1928, and it didn't go well. So we get a nice expositional scene where we're essentially getting caught up with the history of going to the Arctic and Antarctica on the television as Peter Finch is watching this, obviously haunted, and then he goes to bed, can't sleep, and gets up and then summons forth ghosts of the people involved. As I said, it's a bit of a strange little film. It's a strange device. So I'm not going to say who appears, because obviously that gives away who actually dies in the expedition. But if you know your trip to the Arctic expedition disasters history, then you'll know who's going to appear in this bizarre living room courtroom that Peter Finch's character is dreaming, as these characters judge him on his decision making and second guess what happened. And so we kind of go from this living room lounge courtroom to back to the 1928 incident. And you could say it's kind of the cousin of Letter Never Sent, but obviously Letter Never Sent for me is a stone cold masterpiece one of the most beautiful films you'll ever see as far as black and white cinematography. So it's not quite as far as stylistically The Cousin, but as far as human beings against the savage natural world, then I guess The Red Tent is a cousin of Letter Never Sent. As I said, Sean Connery plays the famous Roald Amundsen, who's a Norwegian. I mean, he's played an Irish cop, he's played a Swedish hostage negotiator, he's played a Russian submarine commander, so he might as well play a Norwegian Arctic explorer with his white hair and his white eyebrows. But as I say, Peter Finch is playing an Italian in Peter Finch style. The other characters are probably Italian and Russian, but they're dubbed into English. One of the rescue attempts, when the, spoiler alert, airship goes down, is made by a Russian icebreaker, and all the Russian that's spoken on this release don't have subtitles. So I mean, I think it is a film that desperately needs a better release. So there's sections of the film on the Russian icebreaker that there's no subtitles, so if you speak Russian, no bother. But due to my ignorance, I don't speak Russian. But you get the general gist of what's going on, obviously. It's, as I say, it's a pretty strange film. If you're expecting something similar to the other Kalatozov films, it's not that. To be honest, you wouldn't know it was Kalatozov that directed it. It could be anybody, basically, because as I said, expressionism and spending hours just setting up a shot so the sun comes in a certain direction doesn't really kind of mesh with you're dealing with stars like Sean Connery and Peter Finch and Claudia Cardinale, and so it looks different from the rest of his films. Obviously it's in colour, but there's little things like the general takes his dog with him to the Arctic, which seems rather strange. There's a nice scene with a polar bear, and eventually, they're on the ice for about 3 weeks or so. 3 of them decide to try and walk out of the Arctic. Morricone's score is good at times, but you could argue it's a fairly run-of-the-mill melodramatic score. You won't be able to see, but the image of the poster that I've put on the screen, the tagline is like, forget everything you've heard about heroes, forget everything you know about love, because Claudia Cardinale is in love with one of the people in the expedition, so that's how they shoehorn that in. And Cardinale tries to convince Sean Connery's character Amundsen to go and try and find them. Hardy Kruger is a kind of professional mercenary pilot who tries to find them. I mean, there is some nice conversations with the ghosts in the living room. About, some character is criticising another character for doing or trying to do the rescue just for money, whereas obviously being an explorer, it's generally out of hubris or to try and make a name for yourself and become famous and challenging yourself. So the kind of motives of why these people do these seemingly foolhardy things is brought into question, which is kind of nice, because you wouldn't catch me flying an airship to the Arctic. So it has flaws, there's no doubt about that. But as far as being like a Sunday afternoon adventure film with a ghost courtroom in somebody's living room, it's an interesting film, certainly. As I say, it probably deserves a better release. It would be really nice if the section with all the Russians aboard the icebreaker was actually subtitled. Interesting, but certainly out of the 6 Kalatozov films that I've watched, this is easily the least successful. I probably would watch it again though. It's still watchable. It doesn't really drag as far as pacing. It is interesting though, because in the back of this DVD it says it's 121 minutes, and on Letterboxd and IMDb it says it's 158 minutes. So I don't know whether for the American release it was cut by half an hour, because it certainly didn't feel like 2.5 hours. So I've got a feeling there may be a longer cut somewhere in existence. You can please let me know if you've actually seen the 2.5 hour. I wasn't conscious of the time, and obviously because this is a DVD-R, there was no kind of clock to actually see how long the film was, but it felt more like a 2-hour film, even though, as I say, it does fly by. It's not as if it drags, so it's certainly watchable, and as I said, I'll watch it again, but I would be interested to see or hear if there is actually a 158-minute version kicking about, because it does feel a little bit compact even at 2 hours. But it's an interesting, I wouldn't say it's a failure, because as I said, it is an enjoyable Sunday afternoon kind of watch film. And again, it's good to see Sean Connery stretching his acting chops with playing a Norwegian this time, obviously with a distinct Norwegian accent, like he did in all the other ones where he was playing non-Scottish characters. But certainly an interesting film, watchable as I say, but for me at the bottom of the Kalatozov films that I have seen so far. So this is kind of the end of this mini Kalatozov journey until I find some more, but I'm not sure how many more you can actually find. He didn't actually make that many films because he kept going on hiatus for several years. We consider those two silent films that I did a double take on from 1930, and this is from 1969. Somewhat of a long career with perhaps not as many films as he should have made, because again, there was reasons for going on hiatus every now and again. So that's The Red Tent, an odd little film, but fascinating nonetheless. Please let me know in the comments if you've seen The Red Tent, especially if you've seen a longer cut, or if there is a longer cut, you can please let me know. And hopefully you'll join me again for more random reviews. This is Solitary Ronin, slightly confused by the whole thing, saying farewell.